All right, busy NBA docket, a lot to talk about. Jason Timpf, host of Hoops Tonight. All right, let's start. LeBron will be fine. He'll be back in a week or two. I thought the bigger issue with the Lakers-Celtics, and I said this during the week on my show, is Boston's better. You can't come in missing starters, so no Jackson, no Rui. That's length. That is length you can use to get anything near the rim, defend the rim. So when I heard that, I thought no Jackson Hayes, no Rui Hachimura. This is gonna be a tough one. But I also felt there's two things I want to talk about. Number one is I thought the Lakers looked tired in the second half. I thought they just gave you everything they had in the first half. One of the best first halves of the NBA season. It was a great first half. Luka didn't play particularly well, but it was a great first half. And then I thought in the second half, the Lakers ran out of gas. And if it was at home, maybe it's different, but I fly a lot. Flying from LA to Boston, I don't care how good the seats are and how comfortable you are. It takes its toll. And the pace the Celtics play at, I thought it wore the Lakers down. So that's my first take, and you can address that before we get into the Luka Tatum stuff. Just the fact that no Jackson Hayes, no Rui on the road. They played a pretty frenetic schedule. Over the last couple of weeks, and I thought they ran out of gas.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I think there are some realities about this matchup that, regardless of regular season circumstances, need to be factored in. Like, we're going to talk a lot about the top teams in the league today, and I don't think Boston is like separated from everybody in terms of like putting real distance, but I do think they deserve to be favored, and I think they've demonstrated that at several points this season in several different games. That said, within the context of that particular game, it was kind of interesting to me to see the juxtaposition of that one with the first time these two teams played. The first time these two teams played, the Lakers played an excellent defensive game, and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum couldn't get anything going, and the
That's
Lakers
right.
controlled. This game, the Boston Celtics put together a beautiful defensive game, and LeBron and Luka can't get anything going. And so
Yeah.
there's these two teams in particular. And by the way, I think there's a decent chance we see these two teams in the finals. If these two teams face in the finals, it's going to turn into this like relentless matchup hunting type of game. And it's all about Tatum and Brown going at Austin and Luka. And then on the other end of the floor, LeBron and Luka going against Derek White and Al Horford. And I think there were some mistakes last night. JJ Redick talked a little bit about it after the game. Al Horford is a big body that slides his feet well. And he has always done well against bully ball players, even going back to Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Al Horford has some of the best reps against those guys that you'll see in the playoff context. LeBron and Luka are bully ball guys, and Al Horford was just having none of it. And he put together just a beautiful defensive game. In that second half, they were much more deliberate about attacking the Celtics guards, and you got to see how they can have some success. And that's really it. Like, both of these teams, I actually think, interestingly enough, these are the only two teams in the NBA that can put together five-man groupings where you really can't leave anybody open. When Rui is healthy and Dorian Finney-Smith is healthy.
That's right.
And when the Celtics have Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford healthy, when they're healthy and put together, like even the Knicks, you can help off of Josh Hart. Even like with the Thunder, you're going to give late contests to guys like Lou Dort that you're not super worried about.
Absolutely right.
These are the two teams that can truly space the floor and force you to play one-on-one. And if there was one defensive reality from the Lakers in this game, they've guarded really well when they can offer help from behind in their kind of swarming, switching defense. Boston, they really leave you on an island. Because if you help, it's like Luka got caught a bunch of times in the first half of that game, helping in on drives, easy kickouts, and he was giving up threes. You cannot help with Boston. You cannot help with the Lakers. It turns into a one-on-one contest, and the Celtics just did a much better job of it in this particular matchup.
You know, it's funny. I saw a piece of video. So I had said on the Luka trade, I would never have traded him. But if you gave me 3 firsts, AD and Austin Rivers, I'd sleep on it. And I said that because I've always said Luka's a much better Carmelo. I never think he's in great shape. I don't know. I think he sometimes takes the ball out of teammates' hands. And, I don't think, and I love Luka, but I saw when Luka first arrived in Los Angeles, he looked puffy, hadn't played since December. He's never been in great shape, but my take was LA gets you in better shape. The lifestyle's different, and LeBron and the pressure to kind of impress LeBron. You can see Steph showing off with Jimmy Butler. LeBron's kind of showing off with Luka. I mean, it's ego. It's fun. You finally got your match. And the players, I mean, God, Steph is more efficient. LeBron's playing with an energy of a 27-year-old. But somebody pointed this out to me yesterday because I watched the entire game. They said, look at the energy of Jason Tatum on both ends of the floor. And Luka has bad stretches, like right now. Like he has these 4 or 5 minute or longer moments on the floor, and you're like, bro, you're a negative right now. Like you're just getting beat off the ball. And do you think this is something Luka? Because like you're nodding your head, you're seeing it too. Does Luka play himself into better shape, or did Dallas, with their concerns about these consistent calf injuries, about not being in shape and lifestyle? Do you think we're getting 80% in Los Angeles of Luka? That some of the videos on the internet that show him 3 years ago, dude, he was tomahawking it. And you're like, not really quite what I see now. What is your take on where Luka's at and where he'll end up as a Laker?
So that's a tough game for under any circumstances to go on the road in Boston, a Boston team that's had some disappointing losses at home this year. And was kind of itching for they were itching for a signature win. Like the Celtics really wanted that one. I mean, you could tell the level of intensity they brought right from the opening tip. It's a tough game under any circumstances. Luka is not yet back into his peak shape. It's going to take a little while to get there. I actually think it'll be somewhat. There's a little bit of a blessing in disguise with the LeBron injury because LeBron has been going full bore since like mid-January, and it was kind of inevitable that there'd be some sort of nagging thing that would arise over the course of this stretch. And I actually think it'll be pretty nice for LeBron to get like a month off here, a couple weeks off here, just to take a little break before the postseason. That'll get more time for Luka to really lean into usage, to really lean into having the ball in his hands and build his rhythm back. That said, like this goes back to the Dallas series. The Dallas series is a different type of challenge. The Dallas-Boston series in the finals. It was a different type of challenge because Boston had all sorts of dudes that they could help off of. They were putting Kristaps Porzingis onto P.J. Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. and leaving him under the basket. The Lakers will be able to create more space for him, but he wasn't even getting past Jaylen Brown for the most part last night. Like just one-on-one, Jaylen Brown had him in clamps and was bringing a ton of physicality and like there's this kind of recurring theme I've seen. OG Anunoby did a little bit on Thursday night. I don't know if you caught the Knicks game. It was kind of a little bit similar in that game.
Yes.
All the way back to the second round series with Oklahoma City last year. Lou Dort gave Luka some issues. Luka struggles with the really big and strong forwards that can guard. And so there's a little mini challenge here. If the Lakers are going to be able to defeat a team like Boston in the finals, Luka's going to have to overcome the Jaylen Brown problem. But as far as the big picture goes, he's 25 years old. He's playing alongside one of the greatest work ethic dudes you're going to meet in the league, one of the greatest take care of your body type of dudes that you see in the league. I think Luka is going to get to a level of better conditioning. That said, I don't think he's going to be the dude who had like 17 dunks in his rookie year. I think that ship might have sailed.
Sorry to interrupt this great video, but please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you. Now back to the video. Yeah. It's interesting with the Celtics because Tatum played very well. And, I say this often on the show that there's a real gap in what fans view as hate and what I view as contextualization. So every time I talk about Jason Tatum, I always say, he's great. He's a great player. He's a top 8 player in the league. I don't believe he's top 3. I trust SGA offensively more. I trust Jokic is all around better. I trust Giannis defensively more. I think Luka at his best is a better, more natural offensive player. Hell, if you gave me 1 quarter to win it all, game 7, I'd take LeBron over Jason Tatum. I actually would. But he's a great player. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's a nice kid. But I've said this, there are games where I'm like, where is he? Is he on the floor? Now, this was not one of them. He was terrific. And I've watched him now play live 3 or 4 times. I get to the arena early. He's the first guy on the floor. But it is interesting. People get very upset about this. And I've said this. In the Olympics, when you're playing with the world's best players, he was a coach's decision, do not play against Serbia. And he had 2 in the gold medal game. And that LeBron and Steph flourished in those games. So there are players that sometimes when are around great players, LeBron was like this very early in his first Olympics. He was like, finally, it opened up more of LeBron. And then there are players that actually love playing within a system. I think Jason is one of those players. I think his DNA is he's a teammate. He likes being part of a collective. He chose Duke so he could play with other great players, right? Like Krzyzewski makes you play defense. He was there with Grayson Allen, Luke Kennard, if I'm remembering right. So my take is, I think he's a star. I think the NBA's only ever had three true faces of the league: Magic, Michael, LeBron. I think Bird was a reluctant, because he was conjoined with Magic. He was face of the league, but Magic was the face of the league. He loved it. French Lick, Indiana, pimples on the face, grumpy Larry Bird didn't feel face of the league, but you join him at the hip with Magic, and it's like, okay. And Shaq and Kobe, I think you could argue as a pair, were face of the league for several years. Duncan never was. Akeem never was. Karl Malone never was. So what do you make of kind of my criticism of Tatum? It's not a criticism. It's more like, listen, at any one time, the NBA has two faces, or one face of the league, two global stars, and about 15 other stars, Carmelo Anthony guys. Is that unrealistic to say?
I mean, I heard your rant about Jason Tatum, and frankly, like there is truth to the fact that Tatum lacks like the traditional NBA aura, right? Like he's a good dunker, but he's not Vince Carter. He's a good shooter,
Right.
but he's not Kevin Durant. He's big and strong, but he's not LeBron. He's a good playmaker, but he's not Luka Doncic. He's a good defender, but he's not what Kawhi Leonard was in his prime. And he doesn't really have a very big personality. So like it's really hard to like put together, something specific about Jason Tatum to like market really well as far as like face of the league type of stuff. That said, like he's really good at all of those things still. And so he's become like, just by virtue of him being a jack of all trades, he's become one of the most useful players in the entire NBA. This has kind of been the interesting trajectory of Jason Tatum's career. If you go back in the early years, in like 18, 19, 20, in those years, Tatum was like projected to be one of the best shooting forwards in the league. He had some unbelievable jump shooting seasons during that stretch. Then what happened is he started to bulk up, and he got really big and strong, and it greatly improved his defensive versatility. He improved as a playmaker. But in that stretch, 2021, 2022, 23, 24, his jump shot fell apart and became super unreliable, to the point where it was like sometimes it goes in, sometimes it doesn't. He'll have 50 in a playoff game, he'll have 17 in a playoff game. It became one of those things where he couldn't rely on the jump shot. Honestly, I think the Team USA situation, right off of the heels of last year's playoff run, as he shot very poorly in the playoffs on jump shots, and then he shot, 0 for 16 with Team USA, I think he got humiliated and spent the entire summer in the gym. And he's added like a reliable jump shot to the Swiss Army knife that he already was. And now it's one of those things where, like, I agree with you. I think Jokic is better. I think Giannis is better. I think Shai's better. I think Luka Doncic is better. I think if you asked like league average role players alongside all those players, I think Tatum is behind those guys. But I do think he's closer to that tier, or in that tier at the bottom, as opposed to the next set of guys. Like when you look at the next set of guys, like I think Tatum brings more on a night in, night out basis than Anthony Davis does. I think Tatum brings more on a night in, night out basis than that next tier of guys, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Steph Curry. I think he deserves credit for being like a foundational, like reliable, you can count on this dude type of superstar. But I also think everything you said regarding, he does not have a flashpoint in his skill set. There's nothing like that. There's not one.
Well, think about that. You can close your eyes. I've said this, and I can think of like 5 Michael plays, 6 LeBron plays, a bunch of Magic, Bird. You close your eyes with Tatum, and you're like, it's like Karl Malone. I don't have a Karl Malone play. I don't have a Duncan play. There is something about the persona, the aura, the imagery that is face of the league. Well, I've said it before, Fubo is one of my favorite ways to watch sports. College basketball, NBA, it doesn't matter what the sport is. Fubo TV delivers. I watch it constantly on airplanes. If I'm in my car and I'm driving and I want to stay up to date in the game, FuboTV.com/Colin, you will get $50 off for 2 months of Fubo TV. And the Masters is going to be on it. Major League Baseball is going to be on it. It's just, in my life, I can't always be in front of a TV. but I want to stay up to date on what's happening in sports. Fubo TV.com/Colin, $50 off 2 months. Fubo. Okay, so I watched most of the Nuggets Thunder game. I missed the first quarter, but Shai went off for 40. Of course, this week Jokic had a 30-20-20 plus game. Right? I think it was the first time ever in league history to somebody to do that. So I love Jokic. I thought he should have won 3 straight. Embiid was sort of gifted one, but I'll tell you why I would give it to SGA. I'd give it to Shai. So I've said this on many occasions. Words matter. You can get in trouble for the wrong word, but you have to watch the words. It's most valuable. Now, production is a huge component to value, right? Like valuable is, I always say this, moms are usually the most valuable person in a house. Dad may make more. The kids may have a brighter future. Mom's the MVP. She's the glue. And she's super productive, right? Like, at least in my house, mom was the most valuable player. My dad was the local optometrist. He paid the bills. So Jokic, you can argue, is more productive, okay? But he's playing with Gordon, Porter, Jamal Murray, and a coach that's got a ring, thanks to Jokic. SGA, and this is about 15% of it, is a better defender. SGA plays with a roster that is so young, it only averages 1 year older than the Auburn Tigers roster.
Insane.
So he is playing with kids, and that matters. They're still figuring out how to play basketball. Not to mention Chet Holmgren, has been out for a while. You can argue outside of Shai, nobody else on that roster, none of their best offensive players have even hit their prime yet. So, and that's one of the reasons I worry about them in the playoffs, winning big road games with this young roster. So based on the fact that his production isn't Jokic, but it's damn good, he's a better defender, he's carrying a younger roster and didn't have Holmgren for a spell, I would narrowly give Shai the MVP. What say you?
So I actually think Shai has a decent sized lead. Let's just get to the foundational piece of the case. He's 12 games ahead of Denver in the standings. 12. That's an enormous gap between those two teams.
Yeah.
And so when you start to make a case for Jokic, it needs to be overwhelming. And there are some things with Jokic that I think are realities. I think Jokic is a better basketball player than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think
Same.
Denver would fall apart more than OKC would fall apart if the two players were removed.
Agreed.
But that's never been the way that we've given MVP. It's never been sheer value in a vacuum. It's never been who's the guy that we think is the best player for a 16-win playoff run, right? That's never been the way we've done it. It's always been a combination of a bunch of factors, team success, your individual value, like your reputation in the league. There's always been a narrative element. Regardless of how we want to pretend like it should be factored in, it does get factored in. There's narrative, there's momentum, there's all of that kind of stuff. It's kind of like the Jokic 30-20-20 game. It's like, here we are 2/3 of the way through the season. Jokic puts together a stat line that's never happened in NBA history. Hey, let's revisit this thing, even though the Thunder have been consistently a better basketball team this year. I think two things. One, Shai's having a much better offensive season than people are giving him credit for. You mentioned the youth. The youth for the Thunder manifests in inconsistency. J-Dub is an incredible player. He is 22 or he's young. He's super inconsistent. Chet, incredible player. He's young. He's going to make mistakes. He's not a guy that's super dependable night in, night out. He shot 20-something% from 3 in the series against Dallas last year. Shai is the grown-up in the room. Shai is the night-to-night guy. So many of these games break down for the Thunder against good teams in particular. So many of these games break down where it looks like every single Thunder player is uncomfortable and a little bit like kind of shying away from the moment. And Shai has to grab the reins and like control things. And like as Chet's been out of the lineup a bunch this year, as J-Dub has had a down shooting season and he's coming on as of late, but he's had a down shooting season. Shai's been carrying him through that. Shai has been the guy that has lifted their elite defense to the point where they can win games. And so I think he deserves more credit than that. The second piece of it is a reality with Denver. Denver has lost a lot of games this year because they can't guard. And
at all.
Jokic for the record, in the 2023 postseason, had a very good playoff run defensively. He is capable of having good moments on defense. However, there's a simple reality with Jokic that causes a lot of problems for Denver's defense. He cannot switch onto perimeter players, and he can't play on his heels back at the rim because guys just jump right over him and go around him. That forces Jokic to come out to the level of ball screens and put 2 on the ball. So Denver persistently exists in rotation. They persistently exist in 4-on-3s. That's how the Suns score on them so easily. That's how the Lakers scored on them so easily. That is the problem that they consistently run into is Jokic has to come up to the level. When he comes up to the level, it's a simple pocket pass or a skip pass, and they're playing 4-on-3 out of it. And they just haven't been very good defensively this year on the back line rotating out of it. And so they just haven't been as good. Their defense is bad. Jokic is a significant part of that. I think that gets factored into this debate. And so when I really look at it in the big picture, there's not enough for Jokic, even though I think he's having an unbelievable season, arguably the best offensive season ever. But if you look at it, it's not enough to justify that 12-game gap in the standings. And then to tie things up, Shai just dropped 40 on him today as they got to win.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think we're on the same page. Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are. All the new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Slams, dishing the ball, cleaning the glass, get behind your favorite players. Prop bets you can make on DraftKings. It's fun. The home of NBA player props. If you're ready to place your first bet, make it really simple. Pick how many points your favorite player is going to score. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook. They have an app. Download it. Make your pick. If you're a first-timer, here's something special. New DraftKings customers, all you have to do is bet $5 to get 150 in bonus bets instantly. So take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download their app. Takes 90 seconds. Use the code Colin, COLIN, to get 150 bones in bonus bets. Betting just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. You know, it's, God, I thought a month before it happened, I said, Warriors, just get Jimmy Butler. I don't care what analytics say. Steph is sleepwalking. And I remember saying Butler's the anti-Wiggins. Like every possession is intentional, totally intense. Everything's a street fight. I always thought Wiggins was talented, a little passive. You didn't know possession to possession if he was engaged. I think we talked about this last time. So I thought Butler would be a big help. It is amazing. They were 11-2 since Jimmy Butler arrived. What's interesting now, if you start looking at their playoff position, they could end up against Houston, which I think is the dream scenario for Golden State because Houston can't shoot. Like that's the team you want to play, a young team that struggles shooting. You can beat Golden State. They don't have a ton of offensive firepower from the perimeter outside of Steph. Pods a little bit. But when you watch the Warriors, it's really interesting. Oklahoma City, again, is a tremendous defensive team, but I don't trust them, OKC, in a big road playoff game. They're too young. I think Golden State has a lower ceiling, but an incredibly high floor. And I think outside of maybe a Cleveland-Boston, could go 7 games with almost anybody. Is there a team, let's just look ahead. Is there a team the Warriors would not want to face in the West in the playoffs that you just don't think is a good matchup at all?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Because Dallas, if healthy, would be tough with Gafford, Lively, AD. Their center rotation's great. They're a big team. And I could see that team slowing it down and being just a handful for the Warriors. But I think they're going to go into a soft tank here and just keep everybody out. I don't think it's a terrible idea. So Minnesota, if they had the Twin Towers, if they had Cat and Gobert, could be problematic. But I sort of look at the West and I'm like, I don't know. Is there a
I think
team?
they're going to get out of the play-in. It's been really fascinating just how immediately good they've been, and it's been kind of like a kind of a proof of concept for me about roster balance. Just like no matter what you're
Yeah.
doing, if you ever ask somebody to do too much, they're going to be inefficient. They're going to start making mistakes. And there were so many role players for that team that were being asked to do so much more than they're doing now because there was no Jimmy. And Jimmy's come in and just like crystallized everyone's roles, and everyone just has consistent minutes in the rotation now, and everything's coming together for them. They're going to get out of the play-in, in my opinion. If that's the case, it's the team that I would want to face if I was Golden State is a team that they can load up on defensively. And so I think a team like Denver, if they got the 6-3 matchup against a team like Denver, that'd be good. Memphis is another team like that, that is a poor spot up team that they could load the paint up on. The other thing I like, we talked about earlier with being able to bring Jokic up to the level. Steph is that guy. Steph is the guy that will consistently get Denver's defense into rotation. And now they have Jimmy Butler to be the guy that kind of helps pay off those sequences as he's been so good in the middle of the floor this year. I think, yeah, I would lean towards if I was. The problem with the Lakers is LeBron and Luka will just hunt their small guards all day long in space. And I think that could be a problem for them. And the Laker defense, like we talked about earlier, is keyed up on the ability to help off of people. And there are a couple guys for Golden State that they feel like they can help off of. So I think Denver, if they got into that 6th spot, I'd be looking at if Denver slipped to the 3 as a potential matchup that they could upset. Houston and Memphis, to me, are both gettable. I look at it as, I don't know about how you feel, Colin, but I think there's a 5-team inner circle. I think it's Boston and Cleveland out east. And I think it's OKC, Denver, and the Lakers out west. I think those 5 teams are the, like, if those 5 teams are the teams that have substantial chances to win the championship. Behind that, all of those teams I think are pretty heavily flawed. Golden State has been really good since the Jimmy Butler trade, but they've played a relatively light schedule. So I'd like to see a little bit more before I decide where they kind of fit into all of this. Like the Lakers, before they lost to Boston, they beat 14 straight 500 or better teams. like that's how good the Lakers were playing before that Celtics game. I'm not going to bail on them because they flew across the country after a brutal schedule and lost the game.
And missing
2 starters,
2 of their longest players,
2 vitally important starters. Their vertical spacer and Jackson Hayes. Like how often did you see Jared Vanderbilt catch the ball under the basket yesterday with no idea what to do because he can't finish over anybody? But like that's the thing. Like right. I kind of have a feeling that the Lakers are one of the inner circle teams because I've just seen them be so good for so long against so many good teams. I want to see a little bit more like from Golden State because I do think they can enter into that group, but I just want to see a little bit more from them. But I think between Denver and LA, I'd want to play Denver if I was them.
And now for our next segment, Whiskey Business, brought to you by Green River Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Colin Cowherd podcast. If you want to enjoy life's simple pleasures, reach for Green River Whiskey. Whether it's rye whiskey, single barrel bourbon, you're getting over a century of craftsmanship packed into every bottle. Hop on over to greenriverwhiskey.com and discover a legend in a bottle today. I was thinking about this topic. I didn't do it on TV because I didn't know if it was worthy. Stephen A. Smith, LeBron James had that interaction, right? And, it's funny. I've always been a fan of LeBron. And I know Stephen A. I texted him twice recently. Former teammate over at ESPN. And I'm always sensitive. I'm glad my son and daughter did not choose broadcasting. I wouldn't want them to be compared to their dad. And if they got criticized, my take is, well, you got into this business. So, my first reaction is Bronny James is a Laker because Clutch Sports and LeBron James made sure everybody knew we want him to be a Laker. He was not a dominant college player. In fact, his size and skill set is really not that of an NBA player. He's 6'2", but not a point guard. Not a lot of 6'2" off guards in NBA history, and right now he's not shooting particularly well. He's athletic. He's a good kid, smart. I think he was draftable. It was one of the weaker drafts. I defended the Lakers drafting him. A great draft, maybe not. In this draft, which was one of the weaker drafts, about every 4th or 5th NBA draft, this draft coming up is very domestic and very, very interesting at the top. There's some really good players from great programs. Last year was an international draft and a lot of projecting. Didn't have a problem being draft. It was a bit of a flex for Clutch Sports and LeBron to get him in LA, kind of a power flex. And again, you're making $8 million. You were wedged into an organization that probably, in most years wouldn't have drafted a player of your skill level. Um, I tend to defend journalists having the right to opinions. And people say, well, here's one of the things where I think LeBron James, in his mind, is doing the right thing. Don't badmouth my son. But I've seen many broadcasters get their kids into broadcasting, and their kids aren't very good. Some are, some are not. And that's the reality of a public-facing job. Mayor, basketball player, sportscaster. You're not. This is not a job that's, you write annuities or you're in waste management. Like everybody knows his name. So my take is, listen, you have an $8 million contract. You're fair game, right? That's the way it goes. But you played basketball, know LeBron, his kind of ideology, the way he thinks. What was your sort of take on it?
It's interesting. I've been thinking so much about this over the course of the last couple of weeks because it's a dynamic that I relate to a certain extent. I remember like when I was playing at Arizona Christian, when I was in NAIA, I remember like watching a broadcast of a game, and I was having a brutal shooting season. When I was in college, this was the season that I had my worst 3-point shooting season. I was in my head. I was in this like small role where I was taking all these catch and shoot threes out of the corner, and I was just having a brutal offensive season. And so I was struggling with it, and I heard this announcer who was announcing one of the games like talking junk about me in the broadcast. And I remember getting like super upset about it because I'm like, I'm taking 300 shots a day. I'm doing everything I can to fix this problem. And this like dude who has no idea what I'm doing is criticizing the way that I'm playing. And like, I think about that a lot from NBA players where I get it. Like me relative to an NBA player, even as someone who played, me relative to an NBA player, I don't have the cachet or the reputation to be able to criticize the greatest basketball players in the world. And so on a certain level, I sympathize with the plight. But then what you said is the most important context there. We chose a career that exists in the public view. I have a relatively small platform among the big shots in the media world. I deal with a shit ton of negativity every day. I can't even imagine what you deal with. We won't even go there. But there's just this outrageous amount of negativity. To your point, Colin, like I'm living the dream. I love my job. I love the flexibility that I have. I love that I get to talk about the game of basketball. This opportunity that you have given me has changed my life infinitely for the better. And so I would never sit there and hyper focus on this like specific part of my job that's a negative because it's just so worth it. And that's really what it comes down to is like from the NBA player's perspective, it's just the reality of the predicament that they're in. They have this wonderful life that comes from being a professional basketball player, but it comes with this criticism. The second piece of it is, to me, the criticism is authentic and necessary. And I was thankful in LeBron's tweet thread that he included in there, like, hey, when players fail, we need to discuss it. And I'm so glad he said that because here's the thing. Sports are nasty. They're mean. They're violent. You talk shit. You step on each other to get to the finish line. It is inherently nasty, and there's a winner and a loser. And in order for us to discuss the winner and the loser, it inherently requires us to be critical from time to time. It is part of the job. If we came on every day and we just only said nice things about players, we'd have no credibility. There's a certain amount of this to where it makes it mean more when we say a player succeeds if we also criticize them when they fail. My thing with it is like, just make sure you're doing your homework. Like if you're going to criticize someone, make sure it's based in the homework. You know what I mean? Because at a certain point, if you're just talking shit to talk shit, now we're entering down a darker path. But I found this really fascinating because on one hand, I relate to players, but on the other hand, like this is just the reality of the situation that we're in.
That's why I asked you. Yeah, because you played college basketball, and I've tried to never make it personal. Although like I said for years about Carmelo Anthony, I'm like, man, if you're not willing to play defense, James Harden, I felt the same way. You're not a great teammate because defense is effort. Offense is a lot of skill. It's a lot of fun. Playing defense sucks. It's hard. So what you're basically saying if you won't defend, and I feel this about Luka, is, I'm kind of above that. Well, the other 10 guys aren't. So I've always thought when players don't commit to the defensive end, I think less of them. And you're kind of sending a message to teammates, hey, you do that. I'll do the fun part. And so that's one of the reasons I've always respected LeBron is in his defense in the last 20 games. Jesus, it doesn't even make sense for a 40-year-old. So, and I've always been a huge LeBron fan, and I actually supported the Lakers drafting Bronny. I supported Bronny playing in that game so the father-son record could be set. I'm for it. I was a little critical when he had one good, really nice G League game, and they quickly moved him up, to the Lakers. And I'm like, guys, now you're asking me as a broadcaster to lie to the audience, and I'm not going to do that. Is that he's not an NBA player. He may work himself into a, eighth, ninth guy in a roster, and I'm rooting for that because I really do think Savannah and LeBron have done a wonderful job considering this generational wealth. They're good people. They're grounded as much as you can be if you're Ronaldo, Messi, LeBron, Brady, right? Like you just kind of bake in some of this shit ain't normal, right? So it's just interesting. I think the audience wants me to have definitive takes and take a side. But I think Stephen A. Smith does have a right to be honest about Bronny. But I also get the dad part. But I do come back to, listen, the minute you made that decision to wedge Bronny onto the Lakers, the most sacred part of sports is the uniform. You gave somebody a uniform, and many question whether he is uniform worthy at the NBA level. Like you can say what you want that owners do and GMs do, but that uniform in any sport, that is what makes grown men cry. They work 20 years to wear an NBA uniform. Hell, it can be a 10-day contract, man. If you get 10 days in the NBA for the rest of your life, I was an NBA player. And so when you get somebody to put that jersey on for the Los Angeles Lakers, there are going to be some animosity. There are people going to say, wait a minute, time out now. Come on now. And so it's one of those, I know I'm supposed to take a side on this. And I've said this to people privately, I don't talk about this, that, the Ukraine, Putin, Zelensky, Russia, United States, it's way more complicated. I've watched more video on that story in the last 6 months than everything except sports. There's a lot of complexity with NATO and the history of Russia and us. And sometimes I'm if I'm ever critical of the media, social media has made simplicity the go-to apparatus. And I think Bronny, Stephen A., LeBron, I think it's complicated. I think there's the dad thing, there's the history thing, there's the journalist thing. And I hated to see it because I love LeBron and I really like Stephen A. Smith. I like them both. They're really good at what they do. And I know that's considered a soft pedal, but that's how I feel about it.
It's so fascinating because you're asking people to just bring a little bit of nuance into the discussion with the LeBron Stephen A. Smith thing, and there's just none of that. There's none of that. There's like this huge anti-LeBron, he's ruining Bronny's life kind of angle, and then there's the Stephen A. Smith step to LeBron, and now LeBron's getting in his face and he's paying the price for his actions. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm doing the lip reading when I'm watching LeBron, and he's saying like keep my son out of this. And to your point, on a very basic level, Bronny is an NBA player with a large profile. He's going to get discussed. Like there's no universe where he's not going to be criticized like that.
And played at USC and Sierra Canyon. He was a high-profile high school
player. And so to me, it's like on a very basic level, we have to acknowledge Stephen A's right to discuss Bronny. That's very, to me, that's a very simple part of it. But then there's another reality, which is like, okay, LeBron probably feels like Stephen A's used him a little bit like a punching bag over the course of the last, year or two. And I think LeBron's sick of it and he's lashing out. So on one hand, I'm like, okay, I also support LeBron's right to confront Stephen A and be like, hey, dude, what the heck? But like the specific point he decided to argue regarding his son, it's hypocritical. Because to your point, as soon as you elevate Bronny to this level, how could you possibly hope to protect him from that type of criticism? It's part of the deal. Well, you've dealt with it, LeBron. You are the most polarizing player in NBA history. Like this, this.
Let me add something else. that I think, again, is nuanced. One of the reasons I've always been so impressed with LeBron James, he didn't grow up with a father. Okay, it's pretty understood that both parents can, over the course of time, be very beneficial to any child who then becomes an adult. LeBron James has stayed out of trouble, and he did not have that guiding, strong hand of a father. And yet, you would never know it. He's been a terrific father, a terrific husband, a wonderful businessman. He is such a good friend. I know two of LeBron's friends. LeBron's a great friend. And could I argue that LeBron takes so much pride in being a father because he did not have that at home, that he is going to err on the side of overprotective? And I'm going to defend the hell out of LeBron for that, right? Like, I'm sorry. Now, again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too sympathetic. And my dad wasn't always around, but he was around enough that I had a dad. And he was the local town optometrist, and I was very proud. And he gave me multiple moments of wisdom and advice and a spanking or two when I turned the sprinkler on as he was trying to move it, and whack, 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 hit my dad as he had his white doctor jacket on heading to work and was soaked and had to go back inside. I got spanked that day. I was laughing hysterically for a while. So I have these moments in my life where my father had a great impact. I mean, I was talking to a friend the other day about a moment that my dad said something when he was like, I was 12 years old. It has been with me my entire life. And so maybe I'm just being too overly sympathetic, but LeBron didn't have a father at home. And if he's erring on the side of, hey man, I protect my family. This is it for me, man. This is a bubble that I am gonna, if I'm erring on the side of overprotective, I got LeBron's back on that. And that's the kind of stuff I think of as somebody that's divorced, 6 kids are in my life. How do I be a step parent? I think about all that stuff. Maybe I'm too old and protective, but I think it's more complex than Stephen A's a bad guy and LeBron's a good guy. And it's just, that's not the way life is, right?
No, I agree. And to your point, like there's the motivating factor is something that all parents can relate to. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about just in overall player criticism. Just because the player is being unrealistic about the realities of his profession and the fact that criticism comes with that profession, it doesn't make it like I also relate to that player when he pushes back and when the player goes like today Kevin Durant tweeted at Skip Bayless. Like I also understand the reason why he might want to clap back, even though Kevin Durant should be realistic about the fact that he's one of the greatest players of all time. Therefore,
what happened? I missed it. Tell me.
So basically, Skip Bayless said that Kevin Durant looks like he's already mentally retired. And then KD tweeted at him and said, I guess that means both of us are washed.
By the way, I watched that game. Katie had 21, 9, and 8. He was pretty
KD's
good.
Been awesome this year. Like the Suns'
Yes.
issues are like entirely organizational. KD is, I think, if someone gets KD this summer, he's gonna walk right in and help a team win a title, or at least get him close. Like he's so good. He's so good.
Oh, he's so good. I would love to sit down and break bread with Kevin Durant. I really love the guy. I think he's such a fun player. I like everything about him. I hated him leaving Golden State, but he's such a unique all-time player. I love Kevin Durant. I love watching him play. I like his quirky personality. Jason Timpf, host of Hoops Tonight. This was fantastic. I had some NFL news before you, but this was really good. Let me throw this out there, folks. The Steelers are going to sign DK Metcalf to a 5-year, $150 million contract. I'm just telling you, I wouldn't do it, and I like DK Metcalf. That is way too much money for a wide receiver, especially for an organization that can't figure out offense. As always, Jason, your money. Thanks, buddy.
Good to see you, Colin. Looking forward to next time.